Before this story begins, take a second and subscribe to my channel. These are real-style stories that explore emotions, choices, and the moments that change us forever. If you enjoy deep, honest storytelling that stays with you long after the video ends, subscribe now. You won't regret it. Because this story, it all began with a single glance. A look that lasted too long, too intense, and far beyond what I was prepared to understand at that moment. My name is Emily, and I had just turned 21 when I finally understood how fragile innocence can be. I grew up in a quiet home with just one constant: my father. My mother passed away when I was still very young, taken by a long illness that slowly drained the warmth from our household. After that, it was just the two of us. My father, Robert, did everything he could to fill the space she left behind. He became my protector, my guide, my entire support system. He cooked my meals, attended my school events, helped me with homework, and sat beside my bed when nightmares wouldn't let me sleep. My childhood was not perfect, but it was full of love. And because of that, I believed love was simple, safe, predictable. I was wrong. Everything began to change when I turned 18 and left for university. I still remember the morning I packed my bags. The house felt heavier than usual, like the walls themselves knew something was ending. My father tried to stay cheerful, but I saw the sadness in his eyes as he hugged me goodbye. I was excited, but I was also terrified. I had never lived without structure, without someone watching over me, without rules. University promised freedom, and at that age, freedom felt intoxicating. Campus life was overwhelming in the best and worst ways. New faces, new voices, new stories. I met people from backgrounds completely different from mine. Girls who were confident, bold, and unafraid of life. They talked easily about parties, relationships, and experiences I had only seen in movies. At first, I stayed quiet. I observed more than I spoke. But slowly, curiosity crept in. Weekend nights were filled with laughter echoing through dorm hallways. Music thumped through thin walls. Everyone seemed alive, awake in a way I had never been before. I didn't want to be the girl standing in the corner anymore. My first night out felt surreal. Bright lights, loud music, a crowded room pulsing with energy. I held a drink in my hand, unsure of how I felt about it. The taste was strange, bitter, yet thrilling. My friends laughed, danced, pulled me into their world. And for the first time in my life, I let go. One night became many. Observation turned into participation. Hesitation faded into excitement. I wasn't reckless, but I was changing. Somewhere between classes and late-night conversations, I experienced my first real infatuation. It was innocent, pure, unexpected. Long messages, shared dreams, quiet moments that felt important simply because they were new. Love, real or imagined, had found me. By the end of my first year, I was no longer the girl who had arrived with trembling hands and careful steps. I had grown stronger, louder, more confident. And yet, I missed home. When summer break arrived, the dorms emptied out. Laughter disappeared. Silence returned. Going home felt strange. I walked through the front door and found my father sitting in the living room, focused on the television. Without thinking, I tried to sneak up behind him, smiling at the idea of surprising him. But he turned around instantly, laughing as he caught me. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Dinner that night was warm and familiar. We talked for hours. I told him stories about school, about how fast time had passed. He listened closely, smiling in that proud, quiet way. "You've changed," he said gently. I smiled back. "So have you." The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, landing softly on the walls of my old bedroom. Everything looked exactly the same: my desk, my bookshelf, the faint cracks in the paint. But I wasn't the same person who had left. University had changed me more than I realized. I stretched, listening to the sounds of the house waking up. Footsteps downstairs. The clink of a cup against the counter. Familiar sounds, yet something inside me felt unsettled. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. Later that afternoon, Daniel stopped by. Daniel had been a close family friend for years. He worked with my father and had always been around during important moments, Birthdays, holidays, quiet dinners. Growing up, I barely noticed him. He was just there. But now, seeing him again after a year away, something felt different. He smiled when he saw me. "You've grown," he said, surprised. I laughed it off, but his words stayed with me. We talked casually, about school, about life, about how fast time moves when you're not paying attention. He listened carefully, like my words mattered. That alone made me feel seen in a way I hadn't before. Over the next few days, Daniel visited more often. Not intentionally. Not planned. He helped fix things around the house. Stayed for coffee. Shared stories about his own past. Mistakes he'd made, paths he'd taken too late. There was nothing dramatic. Nothing inappropriate. But there was connection. And that was what scared me. Because connection can blur lines if you're not careful. That I began noticing things I hadn't before. The way Daniel paused before speaking, choosing his words carefully. The way he respected silence instead of filling it. The way he treated me, not like a child, not like something fragile, but like a person. It confused me. I questioned myself constantly. Why am I noticing this now? Is this admiration? Or something else? Late at night, those thoughts returned uninvited. And with them came guilt. One evening, while we were alone in the living room, Daniel stood up to leave. "Emily," he said softly, hesitating. "You're at a crossroads in your life. Be careful with the choices you make now. They echo longer than you think." That was it. No confession. No dramatic moment. Just a warning. And somehow, that made everything clear. That night, I reflected deeply. Not every emotion needs to be acted on. Not every feeling deserves a future. Some connections are meant to teach, not to continue. I realized growth isn't just about new experiences. It's about knowing when to stop. After that conversation, something shifted. Daniel stopped coming by as often. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Just less. At first, I didn't notice. Life has a way of distracting you. Errands, messages from friends, endless scrolling at night. But then the quiet became noticeable. And uncomfortable. I realized how much space he had occupied in my thoughts. Not because of anything he did, but because of what I had projected onto him. That realization stung. One afternoon, I sat alone in my room, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun endlessly above me. Why had I felt so drawn to that attention? The answer came slowly, and honestly. I had changed at university. I had tasted independence, validation, desire to be seen as more than someone's daughter or someone's responsibility. I wasn't longing for him. I was longing for confirmation that I had grown, that I mattered, that I was becoming someone new. That truth hurt, but it also freed me. A few days later, Daniel came by one last time. Nothing dramatic. No tension-filled silence. Just clarity. He spoke calmly, respectfully. "Emily," he said, "this is an important time in your life. You deserve experiences that are yours. Uncomplicated, honest, and free." I nodded. Because I already knew. We didn't need to say more. Some boundaries don't need to be rebuilt. They just need to be acknowledged. When summer ended, I packed my bags again. This time, I wasn't afraid. I hugged my father goodbye, feeling grounded in a way I hadn't before. Not because life had become simpler, but because I had learned to pause before crossing lines. Back at university, everything felt sharper. I focused on my studies, on friendships that lifted me, on discovering who I was becoming, without confusion, without guilt. And slowly the weight lifted. Not every emotional spark is meant to become a flame. Sometimes it's just a signal, pointing you inward. I learned that growth doesn't always come from acting on feelings, but from understanding them, from restraint, from reflection, from choosing long-term peace over short-term intensity. That if you're watching this and feeling torn, between emotion and logic, between impulse and integrity, pause. Ask yourself what you're really seeking. Attention fades. Temptation passes. But the consequences of our choices linger. Protect your future. Value your peace. And never confuse intensity with meaning. That if this story made you think, even for a moment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. More real, emotional stories are coming. And some of them start exactly like this one.